Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful, creepy human being you, and welcome to today's true crime episode. I am so happy that you are here. I am so happy that somehow in all of this that we're forced to deal with on the day today, you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or BRATTERSTEIN, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing the murder of 8-year-old Genesis Mata. This 8-year-old girl's life ended in a hotel room, her body covered with injuries that no child should ever have to endure. And behind that closed door, police say that the people she trusted most became her tormentors. What's so frustrating here is the signs were there long before the night that she died, and the system meant to protect her had been warned again and again. So this is going to be the heartbreaking case of Genesis Mata. But before we get into all the details of today's case, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, sometimes 2 a week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. Now, before we delve into this case fully, I need to first say a big thank you to the sponsor of today's video, and that is Aura. Have you ever wondered why you get all these spam emails from companies you've never heard of, or calls or texts from numbers that just seem a little bit off? Well, that is because there are these things out there called data brokers. Data brokers make billions, yes, billions of dollars by taking your personal and private information and selling it to people that you simply do not want to have it, like scammers and marketers. Scammers and marketers. Two groups of people that I really don't want to have my information, and here's some good news and here's some bad news about the situation. Good news. Data brokers are legally required to remove your information if you ask them to. Sounds great, but the issue here is they make the process of removal super difficult and confusing on purpose. I wonder why. Well, that's one of the ways in which Aura comes in. They help automatically remove your information from these sites, and look at just how many of these sites can actually have your information. Like, I don't know who is this? Old phone book? I don't know who that is, but they have my information without my permission. And Aura helps me remove it and helps me keep my information removed. They do all the hard work so I do not have to. And that's not all they do. Aura is all-in-one digital security. You can get alerts if your personal information is found on the dark web. You can get time fraud alerts for credit and banking. You can get a secure VPN, antivirus, password manager, and more. And if anything does happen, Aura has US fraud experts ready to help 24/7. So you get all the online protection you could ever want and need in one place. And that's why I personally recommend Aura. I don't want to leave myself vulnerable, and I have to imagine that you don't want to either. So if all of this sounds as good to you as it does to me, make sure to click the link in my description box. It's aura.com/BRATTERSTEIN, and try Aura for free for 14 days and see if your private and personal information has been leaked online. And if it has, let Aura help you put a stop to it today. Now, I just want to say a big thank you to Aura for partnering with me on today's video. It's partners like Aura that make it possible for me to put out videos as consistently as I do. And a big thank you to you guys for always being so supportive of all of my sponsors. You rock, don't ever change. So now, Genesis's case. I don't know how many of you have heard about this case yet. It is rather new. When I say rather new, I mean Genesis was just killed this month. It's that new. And if you've been here a while, you would know that typically I don't cover cases that are this new. When I told my husband about it, he's like, oh, I thought you don't typically, I thought you don't usually cover cases that are that new. And it's true. It is a rare occasion for me to do that for a multitude of reasons. But occasionally, a case that is new and in the news will transfix me for one reason or another. And what anchored me in my decision to cover Genesis's case was rage. Rage at the idea that anyone could hurt a child in this way, and rage at the fact that one of the people arrested that is alleged to have committed this act against this child was her own father, which is horrific. This is an incredibly disturbing case, and a case that has been compared to pretty accurately, in my opinion, to the case of the murder of Gabriel Fernandez. So today I'm going to tell you the entire story so far, what we know, since it is a new case. I read all the things that you do not have to. At the end of this video, I want you to answer the question of the day. I'm going to give it to you now so you can have it kicked around in your brain as we go through the details of this case. But of course, I want you to answer when we have something to go on. Okay. Well, the question is this. It's the question that has been asked, and it's been asked, and it's been asked. And it's, what are we supposed to do to try to keep these kids safe? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below after we go through the details of this case. Now, with all of that said, come gather around and let me tell you the story of the murder of 8-year-old Genesis Mata. Genesis Ariah Mata was born on November 29th, 2016. 2016, because she is an actual child, a little baby. And she was born to her mother, Destiny, and her father, Ray. And it's clear from the reports that are out there that she did not have an easy start to life. That seems to be clear. But before we get into talking about that, I first want to talk to you about who she was as a person as much as I can, because all the reports I'm seeing are just terrible thing after terrible thing that happened to her, and not enough are focusing on who she was as a person. And I think that that's important to not lose what we lost here. Now, there isn't a ton of information because it is such a new case, and one of the people who would have known her the best, her own father, has been arrested for this, so he's not exactly talking, but I will tell you what I was able to figure out. Genesis was a little girl. Okay, she was a typical 8-year-old girl. She was innocent and curious and spirited and beautiful. She was said to be full of life with this beautiful spirit and a love of music. She would always dance in front of the TV, apparently being a big fan of Ann Wilson's song, Let Me Tell You About My Jesus. And she would ask her grandma over and over to put on her song. She loved people and anything that sparkled, and she was said to be light and kind and polite, and she was said to just be a, quote, happy-go-jolly little girl. She was literally 8 years old, set to start second grade when her life was stolen from her, and stolen from her by one of the people, allegedly. It's all alleged. I need to say that now because no one's gone to trial. It is a new case. Someone's been arrested. Someone's made admissions, but nobody innocent until proven guilty. So allegedly, this was stolen from her by somebody she should have been able to trust the most. And even though that's the most horrific thing that we're going to discuss here, it's safe to say that even before that, she didn't have a very easy start to her life. Genesis's mother, Destiny, was only 16 years old when she gave birth to her daughter. And at that time, she was already a mother. So she was a teen mom. She had a boy 2 years prior to this. This was her older brother. Genesis' older brother. So she had this baby when she was just 14 years old. And her boyfriend, Ray, was 18. Yes, 14 and 18. They had this boy. And then 2 years later, Genesis was born. Now, I can't say for certain what caused Destiny and Ray to make this decision, but 2 years after Genesis was born, Destiny says that she gave custody, like not official custody, but unofficial custody of Genesis to her grandmother. This was Ray's mother. And she did this because she says she thought that this would be a better life for this girl to live, because she herself knew that she wasn't, in a stable position to raise her daughter. I don't know exactly what happened to Genesis' brother. I have suspicions based on things we'll talk about, and based on his age. But again, this is very, very new, so I'm sure we'll find out later. Now, it hasn't been expressly stated why Destiny made the decision to give up her daughter, but from context clues and reading articles, I think it's safe to say it was probably due to her lifestyle, because she admitted herself that she was an addict. She's been using meth for many, many years. And I know that she's also been in and out of jail, as has Ray. They've both been in and out of jail for various reasons. When it comes to Ray, he had prior convictions related to drugs and to guns. I guess in 2021, deputies responded to a report of a man walking in the middle of the road, showing a gun to people. So cops came, ordered him to get down, and they found a 9mm in his pocket that had a live round in the magazine, and the serial number had been removed. And at the time of his arrest, he told the cops that he was in a street gang. Now, Ray did plead no contest to these charges, and he ended up being bailed out of jail by a friend of his that was the manager at a La Quinta, which is going to come into play. It's a hotel that's going to come into play later in this case. But he got out on bail, pled no contest, and he, because of the way the justice system works, even though these crimes happened in 2021, he still hasn't gone to trial, and his trial is actually set for it was set for the 15th of this month. I'm filming this before the 15th. I don't know exactly when you're seeing it, so he may have already had that hearing at the time that this video goes up. But the point is that he was out of jail on bail for another crime when Genesis was killed. So that's what we know about when it comes to what was going on with Ray prior to Genesis being killed. So now when it comes to Destiny, she also had an array of charges in her past for different things, like drug possession and actually being in possession of a stolen vehicle, I think is what it was. I guess she wasn't driving the vehicle, but she was a passenger in a car that was clearly stolen. The ignition was messed with. They could see that when they pulled him over. And when she was pulled over in this car, she had drugs on her. So I know that she pled no contest also and ended up serving 49 days, I believe, in jail, and had 2 years probation, I believe. But that's not even the charges that are the most like, holy crap, because most recently she has new charges, and this is for 2023, and they are much worse, in my opinion. Apparently, in 2023, she and her boyfriend were both charged with torture and mayhem related to injuries that were sustained or given to a 1-year-old boy. Okay? Oh my God, this case is going to be so maddening. I'm sorry. I'm going to be, if you've been here a while, you might be able to tell that my vibes are off. This just pisses me off so bad. But apparently, Emmanuel was Destiny's boyfriend, and they were living together. Okay. They were living together with her 1-year-old son from a previous relationship. And she was also pregnant with his baby, Emmanuel's baby at the time. And Emmanuel he was not the parent who stepped up. Okay. He wasn't that type of guy. So he treated this 1-year-old very different than he would have treated, the baby inside of her. I mean, I don't know for sure because the baby wasn't here. Maybe he'd be a dick to that baby too. I can't say. According to the reports, he and Destiny, Emmanuel and Destiny, got into an argument. And for whatever reason, this argument with his mother, the baby's mother, Destiny, made him mad enough that he hit this baby in the face with a sandal, picked up by its neck, and chucked the baby across the room. The baby hit the couch, and this resulted in a skull fracture, bruises all over the baby's body, ended up having like a severe infection on one of the toes, and this is because of the fact the baby did not receive treatment, and ended up having an ear injury that's so severe that this kid will likely be deaf the rest of its life. Now, the court documents about this case don't say that Destiny partook in any abuse. They say instead that she just didn't get help. She didn't call 911, didn't take the baby to the doctor, nothing like that. And her reasoning for that was that Emmanuel was abusive to her as well, and she was afraid of what he would do to her if she was to take the baby to the hospital. You'll have to comment down below and let me know what you think about that and what you would do in such a situation, because I have a lot of sympathy towards people who are abused. However, your baby's in danger with a skull fracture. So you let me know what you think. I'm not going to even get into it. Most of you know how I feel about a lot of things, so I'm not even going to go there. I'm not going to touch that. But Emmanuel and Destiny, they both pled a lot of no contest pleads here. Pleads here, whatever. They both pled no contest to these charges. Emmanuel was sentenced to 5 years in Waco, which is not enough time. And Destiny was given 4 years of probation. She didn't serve any time. So I mentioned these charges to give you some background in case you're wondering, like, why was Genesis not with her mother? I don't know if Genesis wasn't with her mom at this time because of these child cruelty charges. I don't know if Genesis wasn't with her mom at this time because she was overwhelmed, because at the time that this all took place, she had gone on to have 3 more kids with, I believe, 2 different men. It's not super relevant, but she had more kids. And she had already given her daughter up at one point because she thought she was going to be giving her a better life that way. So I don't know what that's about. I don't know why Genesis was no longer with her grandma, but for whatever reason, she ended up with her father, Ray, who at that time, as far as we know, didn't have any charges for child abuse on his record. Though I suspect if he's the one who did this, that he was probably doing things even if he wasn't arrested for it. Because I don't think you go from 0 to 100 like that. And based on statements made by him and his wife, who was also arrested, it seems like he has a temper. But I say all that to say, it doesn't seem like Genesis really had a good place to go when picking between her parents when it comes to just looking at the situations on paper. It seems like she was just choosing the lesser of 2 evils. Or I'm sure she didn't get the choice. She was just put into whatever she was put in. Now, as far as Destiny goes, because I don't even know what she looks like. I've looked online for her. I guess she had a Facebook and it's been taken down probably by her because I guess people were giving her a lot of shit. So I don't know what's going on with her. Also, I can't find Ray's social media. I was only able to find his wife's social media and grandma's Facebook, I believe. But as far as Destiny goes, sorry, I'm going on like a thing. I'm really frustrated, but as far as Destiny goes, she says at the time that the incident happened with her 1-year-old son, she was ordered to take parenting classes, which she did complete. But she said when it came to Genesis, she hadn't seen her in a while. Like, she had been keeping in contact with her. I guess she was living in Texas, not Genesis. Destiny was living in Texas at this time. And she would keep in contact with Genesis, and they would tell her that she was doing well, that she was going to church, everything was fine. So she didn't think that anything was going on that she needed to check into. But I guess she hadn't seen her since 2018, so it had been quite some time. She was only 2 at that time. She said she would just try to check in and make sure her kids were good, and as far as she knew, they were. But clearly that was not the case. And in July of this year, she actually received a call from Kern County Social Services, which is the county where Genesis was. And they told her, they were informing her that there was a case that was opened up against Genesis's father, Ray. She said in response to receiving this call, she left Texas and she went to California, and she specifically went to Bakersfield, which is where all of what happened here happened. And she started trying to locate her daughter. This is what she says. She says that she got there, she started looking for her. But then, this happened in July. She got the call in July. And by August 1st, Genesis was killed. And she was killed before her mother ever located her. So let's now talk about that. On Saturday, August 2nd, 2025, police received a call requesting a welfare check at the La Quinta Inn on Riverside Drive. Apparently that afternoon, Ray's sister, so this would have been Genesis's aunt, she is not named, but she received a call, and she received a call from Ray's wife. This was a 27-year-old woman named Graciela Bustamonte. Graciela calls Ray's sister and is like, hey, I need you to go and check on Genesis. I need you to find Genesis. I left her alone with Ray, and she's in a bathtub. This is what she says to her, but gives no context. Apparently, at the time that she received this call, her brother Ray was at her house. So she hangs up, she looks over at him and just says, what did you do? Which gives me a little bit of insight, or it helps me form a personal opinion on the type of dude allegedly he may be. But what did you do? He doesn't respond. He looks completely emotionless. So she and her mother leave to head to that hotel and see what's going on. Meanwhile, she's already called into 911, so the police have headed over to the La Quinta, and they've been banging on the door of room 248, but nobody is answering. So they get a staff member to come over and unlock the door, and when they go inside, they find that it is a mess. The bedding is everywhere, there's clothes everywhere, there's trash everywhere, but there's no sign of Genesis. While they're searching, Ray's sister gets to the hotel. Ray's sister, Ray's grandma. No, Ray's sister, Ray's mom, Genesis' grandma, gets to the hotel, sees that the officers are searching, not finding anything, and says, they told me she's in the bathtub. So the officers go to the bathroom door, they bang on the door, nobody opens. So they kick the door in. And that's when they find Genesis in the bathtub, clearly dead. She was in such bad shape that the first responding officer was just like, oh my God, and ordered everyone out of the hotel room. And I guess there is surveillance footage from the hotel where you can see that the officers who are on that scene are clearly upset. I am now going to describe to you what they did to this girl based on what the police saw at the scene, and also admissions that both Graciela and Ray have made since being arrested. And I'm giving you the warning now in case you want to skip ahead, because it is... I'm going to even leave out some of the worst of it, the worst little details, because it's like, I can't even... It's just, it doesn't need to be said, but I'm going to tell you enough that you understand why I'm so fucking angry right now. And I'm warning you because one of the officers, I think it was the chief of police or the chief investigator handling this case, said that this is one of, the injuries she sustained are some of the worst that most of these officers have ever seen in their entire career. When they found Genesis in that tub, they said it was clear that she had been tortured. And not just for the 2 days that she was in that hotel room. Well, she was in the hotel room longer, but there was the inciting incident that lasted 2 days, but for months or years prior to this, because she had marks and scars on her back and on her body that were much older. But it wasn't just the old injuries on her back. She also had some new wounds there as well. And Graciela, his wife, later said when she was arrested that Ray often punished his kids by beating them with charging cords and hangers. And she said that these weren't just simple spankings, which is unacceptable in itself, in my opinion, but they were beatings to the point that these kids often bled. This is something that she admitted to witnessing for years. For years, she would see her husband do this stuff to his kids. And she didn't do anything to intervene. She said that she was afraid that if she was to call the police or anything, she herself would go to jail. I wonder why. But she did say, and I thought that this was great, she did say if these were her biological kids, she definitely would have stepped in and helped. Genesis also had most of her hair cut off completely. You can tell in some more recent photos that her hair is cut pretty short. Again, pretty similar to Gabriel Fernandez. And most of I think all of the fingernails on her left hand were gone. And Graciela said that this happened because Ray had taken Genesis's hand and put it in the door frame. Well, Graciela herself slammed the door on her hand. Genesis also had severe burns on her body and face with massive blisters to the point that her skin split, and this happened according to Graciela because Genesis wouldn't listen. An 8-year-old girl wouldn't listen. So Graciela said that her brilliant idea to get this kid to listen was to pour hot water, boiling water, on her husband's daughter. So Graciela tells her husband about this genius idea of what they should do. He agrees. And so they do that. And after pouring boiling water on this child, they make her go and put another cupful of water in the microwave to do it again, with allegedly her father telling her, quote, "You're going to listen after this." Though Ray does deny taking part in the water torture, is what I'm going to refer it to as whatever. And he denies that. And he also denies taking part in the fingernail door jam situation, though he does admit to taking part in the actions that did ultimately take her life. After all of that, according to both Graciela and Ray went on to suffocate his 8-year-old daughter and punch her in the stomach until she stopped breathing. Once she stopped breathing, he attempted to perform CPR on her, but she was already gone. So they just left her there. They didn't get her any help. They didn't try. They tried CPR. I don't believe that he did that, if I'm honest. If he did, I don't believe it was for her. I believe it was for him, so he wouldn't get in trouble for killing her, in my opinion, allegedly. But they just did nothing, and they just left her there alone. But not before cleaning up, or at least trying to, because reportedly on August 1st, he went into like the employees only area by like the laundry room at the hotel and scaring the crap out of a woman who worked there, because she was like, why is this man here? And men are scary to women, especially in places they shouldn't be, especially men that look like him. I've only been able to find one photo of him because he's a little pussy ass bitch and he hides his face. I don't even want to talk about it. Well, I'm going to talk about it, but we'll get there. He goes in that area. He's looking for a bucket and like towels and stuff to clean. So apparently he was planning to try to clean, but he didn't end up doing that based on the scene. The room still looked like shit, like they've been living in squalor. So instead of cleaning the room, him and Graciela fought, where according to her, he strangled her. They then left the La Quinta and they went to stay in another hotel, or a motel rather. This time they stayed in the Motel 6, somehow being able to afford that, which I forgot to mention this, but they were staying in the La Quinta for free. Allegedly, the hotel manager there, which I believe is the same person who bailed him out of jail previously, though I could be wrong. It would be a coincidence if it wasn't the same person. But this person was letting Ray and Graciela and the kids stay at this hotel for free because they came to him talking about how they were having trouble financially and needed help getting back on their feet. So anyways, they stay in the Motel 6. The next day, it looks like Ray went to his sister's house, telling his sister and his family that the kids had gone to, and I keep saying kids because there are more kids in the story, which we're going to get to, but he told his family that the kids had gone to a birthday party with Graciela. Meanwhile, Graciela dipped. She left town. She said she wasn't running. She left town. She went back to stay with her family in Delano, and that's where she ended up being arrested. So 27-year-old Graciela Bustamonte arrested. 31-year-old Gray Mata Jr. arrested, and he was arrested at his sister's house. And get this, when the two were arrested, after they were arrested, 7 other kids related to this couple were taken into custody. Now, how these kids were related to the two of them, I can't say. I can say that of the 7, 4 had Ray's last name, 2 had Graciela's last name, and 1 had somebody else's last name, maybe a father or another mother. Can't say for sure. What I can say is that at least one of these kids was supposedly biological to both Graciela and Ray, and I only know this because there was a court order for child support against Ray where he was supposed to be giving money to Graciela. So it's just messy. Anyways, they're both arrested and they are facing a multitude of charges, from things like first-degree murder, 2 counts of torture, 2 counts of cruelty, child abuse, and aggravated mayhem. And if you're like me, an aggravated mayhem is a term that you're not super familiar with. Apparently, mayhem is, quote, a felony offense that involves unlawfully and maliciously depriving a person of a body part or disfiguring, disabling, or rendering it useless. Now, because child abuse is, for legal purposes, suspected in this case, all of the other kids that were connected with this couple were checked to make sure that they were okay. And in doing so, Graciela and Ray were given additional charges. And they were given additional charges of counts of torture and cruelty for abuse against an 11-year-old boy. Apparently, this boy was checked and he had bruising all over his body, scarring to his back consistent with being hit over and over for a long period of time, cigarette burn marks, and scarring from a lighter that left a U-shaped burn. So these people, I'm sorry, but they're monsters, man. They are monsters. Anyone who could do this to a child, let alone your own child, is a monster, dude. And I mentioned earlier that I didn't know what happened to Genesis's older brother, like when it came to who he was in the custody of, but based on this kid's age that they're talking about, Genesis was 8, he's 11. That's a 2.5, 3-year difference depending on the months there. And she had a brother who was 2 years older than her. I wonder if this is her older brother, but I can't say for sure. That's just a suspicion that I have, which I'm sure we will find out more about if and when this case goes to trial. Now, after the two were arrested, of course, naturally, they both started to turn on each other and to name the other as the masterminds, the driving force behind this horrific abuse. Because they're not denying it. That's the thing. That's why I'm like alleged, because innocent till proven guilty. But they're not denying taking part in this, which is like, I'm glad they're not denying it. But it just makes me so frustrated because they're both blaming the other for like the most horrific parts, because who wants to be linked to that? You can do it, but you can. So they're both. I'm sorry. I need a second. This is why you can't film new cases, because I'm so hot, because I'm so frustrated, especially with kids' cases. But they're both denying taking part in the most horrific parts of the abuse, but they have both admitted to parts of the abuse leading up to this. So they've both implicated themselves, which will bode well when it goes to trial, if it goes to trial. And I don't know if Graciela has given her reasoning for taking part in this. I haven't seen it reported anywhere. But for Ray, he says that this was never something he wanted to do. He said he didn't mean to do this. It happened out of madness because his kids wouldn't listen. I have thoughts about that. I'm going to give you those thoughts. Just a couple thoughts. Here's my thoughts. Kids don't listen. Okay? Kids don't listen. She was 8 years old. Is it frustrating? Yes. Can it be maddening? Sure. But you still don't beat your kids. Because I have this sneaking suspicion. Call me crazy. But I doubt that you are giving your kids the skills that they need to learn to communicate and listen to you. Since your way of communicating and responding to situations that you don't like is fucking hitting them. Now to move on. As I'm sure you can imagine, this case has sent shockwaves through the community, at least the people who have heard about this case, which I don't believe is enough people, which is part of why I'm talking about this, because I don't think it's gotten the coverage it deserves. I don't think it has the eyes on it that it needs to have on it. And I have a couple of reasons why I feel that way. One, there was a candlelight vigil held for Genesis outside of the hotel room where her body was found, where people were, crying while they held their candles and said their prayers and released their balloons. But there weren't as many people present as you would think, especially not compared to other cases that I've covered. Another example that makes me feel like this case has not gotten the attention that it deserves is the number of people who showed up to a protest that was held outside the Department of Human Services building, which we will get into why they were having that protest shortly. But when the protest took place, the maximum number of people that showed up was 12, dude. 12 after what happened to her, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, was devastating for the people who set this up and for Genesis's family, because her cousin said, there's been all of this talk online. Everybody's talking about how upset they are and giving their hopes and their prayers, but nobody's showing up for them. And she said, where is that support now? And they need it, man. They need it emotionally. They need it logistically, because they have to navigate this awful situation. They have to navigate the fact that they lost Genesis. They have to navigate the fact that they lost her in such a horrific way. They have to live with the knowledge of what happened to her and to the other children in that house, namely that 11-year-old boy, but I'm sure other kids that they came in contact with also. And they have to deal with the legal system. And the legal system when it comes to the trials and stuff, that they also have to deal with this fight that they're having when it comes to CPS, which is what we're going to discuss now. There is a lot of public outcry in relation to this case on social media. I've seen most things on TikTok. I haven't really seen any videos on YouTube, but TikTok for true crime, it exists. I used to post. I don't post anymore. I would just post, clips from my videos. It's different over there. There's a lot of people talking. And a big reason that there's this public outcry is they feel like Child Protective Services did not do enough to protect the kids in Ray's care, specifically Genesis because of what ended up happening to her. And this is because it has been revealed that there was an active case open against Ray because of reports made when it came to a boy that was in his care. Now, I don't know if this was the 11-year-old boy. I suspect it was. But basically, he had been missing school. And when he was going to school, the people there were noticing that there were bruises on his body. So it was reported. And though Bakersfield police has said that there had been no reports about abuse against Genesis reported to the police, Genesis' family has said that they reported to CPS on a number of occasions that there was abuse against Genesis. They say upwards of 20 times. They said everybody knew about it. There were signs everywhere, but nobody did anything to help. And Genesis' cousin Sabrina said of this, and I quote, "It's a bad situation and CPS needs to be held accountable for everything," because they were called on numerous occasions and went out and did investigations and completely left the whole case. And she said that now she is out there speaking up on behalf of Genesis because she cannot speak, and also speaking out on behalf of all of the other kids who are out there who are being hurt. Now, when it comes to CPS, they haven't really said anything. Obviously, they're not going to. They typically don't in cases like this. You don't really hear much. They did make one statement, which was sort of their thoughts and prayers type of statement, where they said, quote, "We are deeply heartbroken and saddened by the tragic loss of a child in our community. No words can truly ease the pain of such a loss, but our thoughts are with the child's loved ones, friends, and all of those affected by this devastating tragedy." Now, there is a petition that I think is worth signing on change.org. Obviously, you could look it over and make that decision for yourself. It is titled the Demand Independent Investigation into Kern County CPS. And there were 4,098 signees, signatures as of August 14th, and I became number 4,099. The petition was started by a woman named Josephina, and she said that she felt compelled to create this petition after her 2-year-old nephew was killed while he was with his father, and the baby was found with fentanyl in his system. And his father, this was Raul Rivera, was charged with murder. She is actually the one who organized the protest for Genesis as well, where those 12 people showed up. That still just makes me so mad. The petition basically says that there are too many cases in Kern County where children are being abused, and it's leading to death. And basically all they're asking for is for an independent organization to go in and look at the way that the CPS system is structured and figure out where they're failing and make recommendations for change to make the system better. They said we're literally not trying to place blame here at all. We're trying to figure out what we can do to make the systems in place to protect kids more efficient and better. So I haven't seen any progress when it comes to this petition. I will have it listed down below, linked down below in case you want to sign it or look it over at least and make that decision for yourself. The latest thing that I saw is that there was a semi-recent grand jury report that was released that basically just said that the CPS in this area is underfunded, understaffed with a high turnover rate, and that leads to people having far too many cases for them to handle. Something that we hear time and time again. And it's just frustrating because then tragically things like this happen. What happened to Genesis should never have happened. It's the absolute worst case scenario with a child abuse case. And it's not even as rare as we'd like to hope and believe. And that's what's so insane to me. The perfect example of that is the case I mentioned in the beginning, the case that people are comparing Genesis's murder to. And that was the murder of Gabriel Fernandez. And if you're unfamiliar with who that is, Gabriel Fernandez was an 8-year-old boy who lived in Palmdale, and he was horrifically tortured and murdered in 2013 by his mother and her boyfriend. Even Gabriel's cousin, one of the founders of the Gabriel Fernandez Foundation, said that she can see the similarities between Gabriel and Genesis's cases. And she said that she made this heartbreaking statement when comparing these cases where she said, quote, "The abuse, the smile behind the abuse, probably wanting to be loved, probably doing everything in her power to be accepted." And man, the similarities between these two cases really are startling. From the people who were responsible, or in Genesis's case, the people alleged to be responsible, the ages of the kids, they're both 8 years old, and even the location, Palmdale is only in an hour and a half from Bakersfield. And then there's just the severity of what happened to these kids. We know some of what happened to Genesis so far. I'm sure we're going to learn more about it if and when this goes to trial. But when it came to Gabriel Fernandez's case, I've never covered it. I don't know if I will. These are taxing cases to cover. They're important, but they're taxing. But he was bound and gagged and kept in like a cabinet overnight. He was beaten and like shot in the face with a BB gun and forced to eat from a litter box. Like, it was a horrific case. And for the record, if you're unfamiliar with that case, there was justice there, as much as one can have justice when they do something so horrific. His mother, Pearl Fernandez, and I say mother in quotes, she pled guilty to first-degree murder and was sentenced to life without parole. And her boyfriend, whose name I'm not sure how to pronounce, Azaro? Doesn't matter. This dick, he was convicted and sentenced to death. And it's just so frustrating because in his case, just like with Genesis, there were many calls to CPS. There are many opportunities to intervene. And I'm curious to see how this plays out with what Genesis's family is fighting for, because in the Gabriel Fernandez case, 2 CPS social workers and their supervisors were charged criminally for child abuse and falsifying public documents because of, quote, their perceived inaction of not removing Gabriel from the home. But ultimately, that case did go to appeals and it ended up being dismissed. So I don't know what will happen when it comes to CPS and Genesis's case, and if anybody's going to be held accountable. Typically that doesn't happen, but I think it's still a conversation that needs to be had, because it's like, we have got to figure out how to stop this from happening, man. We have to. I don't know what the answer is. I don't think it's a simple answer. I think that's why there is no answer so far, but we have to do something, because I'm just so exhausted and heartbroken at picturing what happened to this little girl, and allegedly at the hands of her own father and stepmother. So this case hasn't gone to trial yet, hence the alleged of it all, because both of them have pled not guilty. They both have attorneys. Ray has a public defender, and Graciela, I believe, actually has an attorney. And during the hearing where they entered their pleas, there were a number of family members of Genesis in the courtroom wearing pink in her honor, crying and cursing, with Genesis's cousin saying that she literally had to hold herself back. And they were just going through the worst thing that any human being could ever go through. Now, if convicted, they both do have charges that include special circumstances, which does mean that technically they can be eligible for the death penalty. And I don't know where you land on the death penalty as a whole. I don't even know exactly where I land on the death penalty as a whole. For me, it kind of is a case-by-case basis, but that comes with its own set of complications. But what I will say is, if we live in a world where the death penalty exists, that it exists for cases like this one. So, where we stand. Ariah Mata and Graciela Bustamonte were both supposed to already have their preliminary hearings, but they did end up getting pushed out to October. I think it was October 16th, but don't quote me. And this happened because basically the defense attorneys came to the judge and were like, we are nowhere near being ready. They said they don't even have like the video footage from the La Quinta Inn to like help build their case, which the preliminary hearing, I didn't even mention this, but if you don't know, basically you have that hearing to see if the state has enough evidence to actually take the case to trial, which I suspect there is enough evidence against these 2 people for it to go to trial, but that's what we're waiting on here. And in the meantime, the judge has ordered both Ray and Graciela to not speak to certain relatives, either directly, indirectly, or through third parties. So that's where we are. These 2 people have been arrested, both allegedly / reportedly making incriminating statements. So we're waiting for them to go to trial, and a beautiful 8-year-old child was taken away from this world in one of the most horrific ways imaginable. And I truly cannot even imagine the fear and confusion and just betrayal she must have felt. A memorial has been set up outside the motel room where Genesis' body was found and where police believe she was killed. And people have left candles and teddy bears and flowers and balloons. And one balloon even said, quote, "You are so special." The woman who started the memorial said that she didn't know Genesis and didn't know Genesis's family, but she had a daughter, I believe also named Genesis. And so it just spoke to her, and she wanted to make sure that Genesis, wherever she is, and people know that she didn't deserve what happened to her. And the La Quinta Inn has said that they will be keeping the memorial up at least for now. I can't imagine being the person who eventually has to take that down, because it doesn't stay forever, but it's there for now. So if you are local and you want a place to pay your respects, that is an option. The family did have a GoFundMe, which I'd like to link, but I went to go donate myself just yesterday and it was no longer accepting donations. So I guess they got what they needed to handle the funeral services. So if there is anything else that can help the family that I find out about, I'll try to link it, but I haven't seen anything. So that's kind of where we are now. But since it's a new case, I actually want to Google and see if there's been any updates, because when there is a new case, there often are, like, by the time this goes up, there will already probably be updates. So let me see if there's anything new with these guys. Well, there is an update that I don't want to say we should take pleasure in, because we should never take pleasure in violence against another person. But I feel like sometimes we're like, maybe these people should get prison justice. And there's been a smidge of that. I guess Graciela has gotten her ass kicked while in jail. Apparently, another inmate named Anita attacked Graciela. Grace is what she goes by the way. I didn't mention that because it doesn't matter, but Grace attacked her. I guess Graciela came back from court and was happier than people thought she should be. She was kind of laughing and joking and not seemingly remorseful for what she did, and women there found that to be distasteful. So one of these girls, this was a woman named Anita. I don't know if I mentioned that. She also has a relative named Genesis around Genesis's age, and she herself has been through the system and has dealt with abuse in that way. And she found it to be something she wasn't very comfortable with. So she took matters into her own hands with no regrets. She said she was just disgusted, which I understand. And as a result, something else I just read, as a result, she doesn't know if it's a result of her doing this, but it seems like it's probably a result of her doing this because of the timing of it all. Her commissary, which is like, when you can give money to prisoners, apparently there's a cap on how much a person can receive at one time. And after it came out that she attacked Graciela, she hit her cap. Like, some people that she didn't even know put a bunch of money in her account so that she could have money to get things in jail. And she's like, I didn't even know that was an option. But all of a sudden, after I attacked this girl, all these people are sending me money. And I'm like, so that's that. When it comes to this case, I'm trying to think of something to try to say, something to take away from this, but I find it very difficult to think of anything worthwhile because I find it very challenging to know that human beings are capable of such atrocities. And what I can say is what most people are saying, and it's to keep your eyes open, to watch for kids in danger, to see something and say something. But I do know that after talking about how this girl was failed repeatedly, that saying that rings hollow. I recognize that. But that's what I can try to leave you with, that and the suggestion to create community, find people around you that you can trust, find kids around that you can help watch, see if anybody seems depressed or withdrawn or engages in self-harm, or if kids end up with marks or bruises. And just I'll leave you with the call to action left by Genesis's grandmother, Ruth. She said, and I quote, "If you see any kind of abuse or anything that's going on, please report it as soon as you can. Report it. Do not delay. Do not delay. Please report it. You can save a life. You could save a child's life." So if you suspect child abuse, please call the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline at 1-800-4-A-CHILD or 1-800-422-4453, or go to www.childhelp.org. And with that, my friends, is the story of the murder of Genesis Mata. I hope that it was informative. I hope I gave you all the information you would want when looking into this case thus far. And of course, I just want to thank you for hanging out and remembering her with me today. Now, considering everything I told you throughout this video, I now want to revisit the question of the day, and that was this. What do you believe is the solution or steps towards a solution to help keep kids safe from their parents? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. I know people will have opinions about this, and I am curious to see what people say. Before you leave, please don't forget to leave me a comment down below with whatever case you'd like to see me cover in the future. As you know, I have a long list of cases, and whenever you leave me a suggestion, I put it on my list with your name next to it, so if I do cover it, I can give you a shout out. I love looking into the cases you guys suggest because they're often cases I haven't heard of or cases that need more coverage, and I know you're filled with great ideas and great taste, otherwise you would not be here. If you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, sometimes 2 a week, like this week, I think. And I love to hang out with you. Yes, you specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us. One of us. One of us. And if you want to hang out more consistently, all my social media is listed down below, along with a link to my membership and a link to my merch store. If you didn't already know, what you are watching with your eyes, what you are hearing with your ears is also a podcast. I have a podcast. It's called True Crime with Bratterstein. You can search me on any podcast platform. I'd appreciate it if you did. I'm trying to get out into the algorithm. But of course, if you don't want to, that's also fine. Thank you for being here. YouTube is my number one, and I just want to thank you for always being here. I think that that's surprising and fantastic. And now with all of that said, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That is tight. You are tight. I hope to see you in my next video. And in the meantime, take care of yourself.